For the first time ever, Hytale just released 16 minutes of raw gameplay, and after giving it a watch, let me get this off my chest, look at this game. Whoever decided to cancel this game, we need words. Now, in the blog post we covered a few days ago, we were told multiple times to keep our expectations low. But after giving this a watch, it confirms everything that's excited me about Hytale for all of these years. In today's video, I want to break down some of the key moments that made me go, wow, just really caught me off guard. Before we get to the good, I do need to acknowledge the bad, mainly so you can watch this video and not have to wonder why I'm not talking about it. For example, chopping down trees looks fantastic, but items don't magnetize. That's annoying. Nothing is balanced. In a lot of these battles, the player's barely taking any damage. In some situations, the FOV seems a little claustrophobic, and the AI is a little all over the place. For example, you can see the player try and re-engage with this bow skeleton, but the bow skeleton wants to run away to get distance from the player, but it doesn't look right. But none of that matters. Like, genuinely, none of that matters. And it's not because Hytale is the greatest game that's ever been made. These are all just things that can be fixed down the road, and they're being very transparent about that. One of the first things that caught me off guard is player movement. In one scene, you can see the player ledge grab this big rock to get some extra height, and once they jump off, they do a combat roll. You can see this later in the video as well, as the player jumps over a chasm, and in both third person and third person, it just looks right. And I like that it's not only good for movement, but that roll and slide, it's going to add a bit of flair as you're engaging in combat. On the topic of third person and first person, I was shocked at how seamless it seems to be. Of course, it will be the tap of a button, but the way the player is engaging in combat in third person, then swapping to first person to use a ranged weapon, going back to third to get a better understanding of their surroundings, all of that just seems so different to how you'd play Minecraft. I like how each weapon type has a special ability, with the dual daggers having a pounce, the bow having a triple shot, the sword getting a slash and a lunge, the mace getting a leap, and my personal favorite, I love how this double-handed axe does this big flashy spin. And what I like about that is that it feels like combat can be more than just one-on-one. Imagine going into a temple and getting surrounded, but having a weapon like this. On that topic, we saw a lot of prefab structures just in these 16 minutes alone. The map was shown twice. It looks great. They've done a fantastic job of really showing depth. But if you pause it for a moment, you can see just how many prefabs there are. Now, back in winter 2024, the Riot team tried to show the difference between the old engine and the new engine by comparing lighting, essentially getting across old lighting bad, new lighting good, which meant going into this, I didn't expect the lighting to look all that great. But when you see the gameplay in motion with this raw gameplay, I think the lighting looks genuinely fantastic. I mean, there were some spots where it needed work, like, let's be real, but it is nothing like they were trying to get across in that winter blog post. There was a particular moment where the sun goes behind some rocks and the hue in the sky changes. I just thought that in particular looked really beautiful. Now, there's a moment when the player uses a command to instantly change the time of day. Simon, the one recording, could be using a computer from NASA, but the way the game doesn't chug as that transition happens does ease my mind a little that the performance won't be appalling, because ultimately, that was my biggest concern going into this gameplay. How smooth would it look? What I can't explain because it can only be experienced is how drowning in atmosphere this gameplay is. From the fog to the snow to the rain, from giant trees that feel like they suffocate the player. When you pair all of it with an amazing soundtrack and these great sound effects, it just feels so immersive. And that ultimately is what I wanted out of Hytale. I wanted a Minecraft-like experience with these adventurous moments and a world to really lose myself in. Here are a few moments from the gameplay that just had me going, wow. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is how taken back I was by how much content is seemingly in the game. There's a moment towards the end of the video when the creation tools are being shown and the player is spawning in an NPC. Firstly, I love how simple this is, but if you take a look at the list and the size of the scroll wheel, by my estimations, there are over 600 NPCs you can spawn in, and that might be closer to 1,000. Now, don't get me wrong, how many of these NPCs actually have AI? I imagine not too many of them. Like throughout this gameplay, we saw a lot of enemies, but not critters. They're all things that could be built out in the future, but the fact that assets exist for over 600 NPCs is pretty interesting. Before we round off this video, I actually want to hear from you lot. There's a clip at the very end of the gameplay where the player has a gun and he's shooting a bunch of enemies. How do you feel about this? I personally do not think this fits this game in the slightest, but what do you think? We're expecting massive news in the days to come, so if you want to stay up to date with all things Hytale, make sure to hit that subscribe button. That's it for today though, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.